Chapter 35-42. They clearly shouldn't be together anymore. They clearly should let go. But she still stayed by his side and couldn't bear to leave. As Baishuali said this, tears streamed down her face. She held his hand tightly and said in a low voice, "What should I do? Yimulin, can you tell me?" He lay there quietly and did not wake up. However, the strength he used to hold her became a little stronger. If he woke up, the first thing he said to her would be, "Baishuali, don't leave." In the ward next door, Su Fu naturally could not sleep. She sat in the ward and quietly read a book. When Yi Zhenggang came in, he saw her like this. Su Fu heard the voice and looked up at him. Under the light, the two of them looked at each other with eyes that were no longer young. Su Fu whispered, "Yi Zhenggang, what are you doing here?" Yi Zhenggang forced a smile. "Su Fu, let's have a good talk." "We have nothing to talk about." Su Fu put the book to the side and said indifferently. Yi Zhenggang did not give up after being rejected. Instead, he looked at his wife and sat opposite her. After weighing it for a moment, he said, "Xian Ning has already been transferred away and will not return to Bi City in the future. You know in your heart, why aren't you going home?" Su Fu looked at him and smiled. "How can you take back the water that has been spilled out?" "Yi Zhenggang, I'm not a little girl anymore. You don't have to use this on me. Xian Ning has been with you for so many years. Even if he doesn't have any contributions, he has worked hard. Don't worry, I won't break you guys up. Transfer him back, and your life will be more convenient." Although she said it with a smile and a gentle tone, Yi Zhenggang could hear the sarcasm in it. He sighed softly. "Su Fu, you're not willing to forgive me." Su Fu lowered his eyes. "Actually, there's nothing to forgive or not. We're already so old." She looked up at him again. "I just want you to be happy. If you're happy with her, why not?" "But I love you." Yi Zhenggang growled in a hurt tone. "I've already found a way to drive her away. Why isn't she home yet?" Su Fu looked at him and suddenly asked, "Did you break up with her?" Yi Zhenggang's expression froze, and then he said uncomfortably, "I won't go find her again." Su Fu smiled faintly again. "She can't find you. Can you refuse?" She paused. "You can't refuse." Yi Zhenggang still wanted to say something, but Su Fu lowered his eyes and whispered, "I really don't care anymore." As she spoke, she continued to read quietly and beautifully. Yi Zhenggang was reluctant to leave. He squatted down and looked at his wife. "Can I stay with you?" It had been a long time since he last saw her. When he went to her place, she always refused to see him. This time, if it wasn't for Mulin's illness, he still wouldn't be able to see her. He whispered, Su, I missed you very much." Su Fu's body paused for a moment, because he called her Su. When he was young, he always called her that, especially when they were alone. They were so good at that time. When did he stop calling her that? Maybe it was after he had Xianing, or maybe it was because he felt guilty that he stopped calling her that. At this moment, it didn't sound ironic, but it felt like a lifetime had passed. Su Fu looked at him and smiled lightly. "Find a place to rest. You still have to rush back to Bi City tomorrow." Chapter 35-43. As he said that, Yi Zhenggang started to hug her, kiss her, press her down on the sofa, and do all sorts of things that couldn't be described. Su Fu was stunned at first, and then she became extremely angry. Firstly, this was the hospital, and secondly, her son was lying there without waking up. How could he do this and that? She was angry and wanted to push him away, but there was a huge difference in strength between a man and a woman. No matter how she struggled, it was useless. Moreover, she was worried about their identities and didn't want to make any noise. It wouldn't be good for anyone if it spread. She could only push him away and scold. "Yi Zhenggang, are you crazy? Are you a beast? Why are you thinking about such things at such a time?" As she struggled, her hair became messy and fell down. Her jacket had long been taken away by him, and he pressed her down and kissed her. Actually, he was forcing himself at first, but later on, he was a little moved. He loved her very much, and he hadn't been intimate with her for a long time. It had been almost a year and a half, and he missed her so much. The woman he had slept with for almost his entire life wouldn't let him touch her now. How could he not want to hug her at this time? How could he let go? Su Fu's clothes were torn into a mess. Just as he was about to succeed, the door suddenly opened. It was Hao Yun at the door. In such a situation, Hao Yun should have left immediately to avoid arousing suspicion. However, Hao Yun stood there and didn't move. He stood there for 5 seconds, which was equivalent to giving Su Fu 5 seconds. Su Fu didn't waste these 5 seconds. She immediately pushed Yi Zhenggang away and even gave him a slap. She grabbed her clothes and trembled slightly, not daring to look at Hao Yun. She was extremely embarrassed. Yi Zhenggang's expression wasn't good either. Of course, he was unhappy to be interrupted, but that person was his most trusted subordinate, so he could only touch his nose. "What's the matter?" Hao Yun said in a low voice. "There's some movement in B City." As he said that, he went over and whispered a few words. Yi Zhengang was a little hesitant. He glanced at Su Fu and thought about Yi Mulan. Hao Yun muttered a few more words. Yi Zhengang sighed softly and walked in front of Su Fu. "Don't blame me. I was too impulsive and didn't know how to control my strength. Think about what I've said. Take care of Mulan. Also, Wen Yuan is the most suitable person for him. With the Wen family, your son will be a dragon among men. Think about everything carefully. I know that you, Su Fu, are not someone who only knows how to play with flowers and plants. You know everything that you should know." After he finished speaking, he turned around and said a few words to Hao Yun. Hao Yun wanted to send him to the airport, but Yi Zhengang waved his hand and said, "There's no need. You stay here and take care of them. They're all making me worry, especially," he didn't continue, but he was referring to Su Fu. Hao Yun didn't say anything and just smiled faintly. Yi Zhengang still left. After he left, there was a dead silence in the small ward. Su Fu's body was still trembling slightly with her back to him. She whispered, "Get out." Hao Yun didn't. Instead, he walked over and hugged her from behind. He didn't do anything. He just hugged her from behind and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, I can't protect you yet." Su Fu's body trembled even more. She lowered her eyes and said in a trembling voice, "It's none of your business." She wanted to struggle, but he hugged her tightly. Chapter 35-44. He hugged Su Fu tightly, his fingers clasped tightly for fear of offending him. What Su Fu felt was a strange, masculine aura completely enveloping her. Her body trembled, and her legs were a little weak. She was even a little addicted and didn't want to get up or leave. Hao Yun's hand clumsily helped her button, but he only managed to button one after a long time. Wherever his finger went, there would be chaos of soldiers and horses. Hao Yun smiled bitterly and let go of his hand. "I've never helped a woman put on her clothes." Su Fu lowered her head and buttoned the button with trembling hands. She didn't turn around for a long time and just whispered, "Then have you ever taken off a woman's clothes?" This was an extremely sensitive topic. Hao Yun was usually swift and decisive, but at this time, he was at a loss, because it was in front of the woman he liked. He hesitated for a moment and said, "No, never." Su Fu's mood was extremely complicated. She slowly turned around and looked at Hao Yun. She slowly hugged him, and his body was extremely stiff. She put her face on his shoulder and said very slowly and softly, "Hao Yun, I've already given birth to 2 children for others. I'm not young anymore. You can actually find a younger woman to spend the rest of your life with." He looked down at her and said in a hoarse voice, "But you hugged me." His hands slowly lowered, bit by bit, and finally landed on her back. Finally, he hugged her hard. Su Fu's body trembled, and she tried her best to control her expression. For the first time, she was hugged by a man other than her husband, and this person was also someone around Yi Zhengang. She knew that it was wrong of her, but at such a vulnerable time, she wanted to hug him. She wanted to be hugged by him. Everything seemed to be in chaos. In the end, Hao Yun couldn't control himself and kissed her. Their soft lips came into contact with each other, and he couldn't even bear it. He had never known that women could be so soft and fragile, as if they were about to shatter with a single touch. But very quickly, his manly instincts made him hug her tightly. Kissing her like a storm, he kissed her almost crazily. His large palm landed on her shoulder, and his eyes were dyed with a layer of black. "Can I?" He had no such intention. He did not want to possess her, at least not now. But he couldn't seem to stop. A man who had abstained from sex for decades was almost instantly aroused. Su Fu didn't say anything. He just looked up at him. She had read all the books he had brought her, and she had liked all those little gifts. He understood her. She didn't have any scruples. She wanted this man to hug her. She was even afraid that he would change his mind. Because of the existence of Yi Zhenggang, Su Fu decided to sacrifice himself. This was a crazy decision. She unbuttoned her shirt. She wanted him to love her. She wanted to be Hao Yun's woman. Hao Yun got over his excitement and hugged her, even with her clothes on. He pressed his lips against her neck and said in a hoarse voice, "Su Fu, don't be rash. Don't you want me? Or do you regret it?" She asked in a low voice. Hao Yun closed her eyes and said, "No, because you deserve the best." He wanted to, but he couldn't have sex with her in this situation. It wouldn't be fair to her. She was emotionally unstable and fragile. She should think it through. She should be with him when she was prepared. Su Fu did not say anything else. She just hugged him, this man whom she had known for many years and was 2 years younger than her. Chapter 35-45. Yi Zhenggang stood at the door of the ward and looked at them in shock. His most trusted subordinate and his wife, they were hugging each other. He squinted his eyes, and his breathing almost stopped. Su Fu's clothes were messy, but the way she hugged Hao Yun was not the same as before. Moreover, she was hugging Hao Yun's hands so tightly. It was absolutely impossible to say that there was no ambiguous relationship between them. They were having an affair. Yi Zhenggang narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "You guys, when did it happen?" The people in the ward were shocked and then separated. Yi Zhenggang shouted, "Tell me, when did it happen?" He was furious now. His subordinate and his wife were having an affair, but he was still acting like a fool. How laughable, how laughable. He had trusted Hao Yun so much, telling her everything that was on his mind. When he left just now, he thought that Hao Yun was steady and could comfort Su Fu. But how could he comfort her? He even comforted her on the bed. Yi Zhenggang felt that it was very ironic. He felt that he was an idiot. He was furious and angry, and he was about to go crazy. Hao Yun put his coat on Su Fu's shoulders. In Yunlin's eyes, it was also extremely glaring. He shouted angrily, "Tell me, when did it happen?" "Just now." Su Fu was extremely calm. "We're going to divorce." "Yi Zhenggang, you don't expect me to keep my chastity for you?" Yi Zhenggang stared at her and laughed sinisterly. "You're much more open-minded. Did Su Fu seduce you?" "No, I seduced him," Su Fu said fearlessly. At this moment, Hao Yun sighed softly. "I liked her for many years." He didn't flinch and looked straight at Yi Zhenggang. "I want to marry her." Yi Zhenggang sneered as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He looked at them. "Why do you want to marry her? She is still my wife. Don't forget your own identity." Hao Yun said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Because I love her." Yi Zhenggang's mind went blank for a moment as he said these words with great determination. He thought of the vow he made on the altar when he married Su Fu. He said that no matter if he was poor or rich, healthy or sick, he would love Su Fu and would never leave her. However, they were still well now, and they had already broken the vow. Yi Zhenggang looked at Su Fu and said in a desolate voice, "What about you? Do you also like him? Do you want to be with him?" Su Fu lowered her eyes. When she looked up again, her eyes were filled with unprecedented determination. "Yes, I like him. I want to be with him." Yi Zhenggang felt as if he had been struck by lightning and did not come back to his senses for a long time. When he came back to his senses, he murmured, "You're crazy. You must be crazy. Have you forgotten the vows we made when we got married?" "The one who forgot is you." Su Fu closed his eyes. "Yi Zhenggang, we've reached the end." Yi Zhenggang had made it through the most difficult part. At this time, his mood had calmed down a lot. His expression also became cold. "Su Fu, I have to take you away." Su Fu looked at him in shock. "You can't." "I can." He stared at her and Hao Yun. "I'm your husband." After saying that, he walked out. Then, 2 men came in to catch Su Fu. Hao Yun couldn't stop them. After all, he was a scholar. Chapter 35-46. Hao Yun still stood there quietly and said indifferently, "I don't regret it." Yi Zhenggang slowly walked over, looked at his former beloved general, and said in a low voice, "You don't regret it? Do you know how much I love her? Hao Yun's face tensed up, and his voice was filled with restraint. I don't know how much you love her. I only know that you hurt her, and that Xia Anning appear by your side. How can a woman like Su Fu endure it? How is Xia Anning better than Su Fu? Tell me. She's my wife. You don't need to care about this. Yi Zhenggang growled with a disappointed expression. Hao Yun, you disappoint me too much. From today onwards, you don't have to stay by Mu Lin's side anymore. Hao Yun's tensed-up body seemed to have broken. He looked at Yi Zhenggang and said very softly, You're saying, if you want me to leave Mu Lin, then you'll let your own son face a group of wolf-like people alone? As he said that, his voice became louder. Do you know what kind of life he has been living for the past year? You always think that what is best for them, but have you ever thought that this is what they want? Have you ever thought about what would happen to me, Mu Lin? Yi Zhenggang's voice was cold. I am his father. What are you? Hao Yun gave an extremely complicated chuckle. I will be his stepfather. As he said that, he walked out, and when he reached the door, he said indifferently, I will not leave. I will wait for her. He turned his head, his eyes red. Yi Zhengang shouted angrily, Bastard! Hao Yun walked out, but Yi Zhengang did not leave that night. In H City, no matter how big the matter was, it was not as big as a fire in the backyard. When the sky brightened, he walked into Yi Mu Lin's ward. Bai Shuili was still guarding him and did not sleep. Yi Zhengang stood at the door and watched for a while before walking in. His expression was extremely tired, and he looked as if he had aged a lot in an instant. Bai Shuili saw him get up. Yi Zhengang glanced at his son, who was still unconscious. At this moment, he had no one to confide in, so he turned to Bai Shuili and said, Auntie, she's taking things too hard. She actually chose Hao Yun. Bai Shuili was actually very sad, because Yi Mulin was lying here and it made her heart ache. However, when Yi Zhengang said this, she was really confused. What did he mean? Auntie, was she Yi Mulin's mother? Was she also the person she used to call Mom? Yi Zhengang walked over and stood beside the bed to look at his son. He whispered, his mother refuses to change her mind and wants to be with Hao Yun. Do you think Mulin will agree? Bai Shuili shook her head. I don't know. Maybe he will agree. Yi Zhenggang's expression changed, and his voice became stern. Why? Bai Shuili looked at him and smiled. If he was like you, I wouldn't be here, wouldn't I? Yi Zhengang looked at her and felt a little complicated. He had always thought that this girl was not worthy of his son. She was not even worthy of Mulin's feelings. However, he had a feeling that Bai Shuili did not know what had happened, but she vaguely understood Mulin's feelings. She understood Mulin's deep love, so she was willing to stay by Mulin's side and was willing to be here. At this moment, Yi Mulin woke up. He looked at them with his head tilted, and his voice was a little weak. Shueli, help me up. Chapter 35:47. Yi Mulin looked at her and struggled to sit up. Help me up. Be obedient. How could he be obedient? Bai Shuili didn't want to and glared at him. Yi Mulin stared into her eyes and said again, Help me up. She was unwilling, but she couldn't refuse. She helped him up carefully and put a pillow behind his waist. She even lifted the quilt to look at the wound. If it wasn't for the situation, Yi Mulin would have laughed at her little action. He sat down. Although it was a little painful, he could bear it. He lowered his head and said to Bai Shuili, Go get me a glass of water. You can't drink water. The doctor said so. She bit her lips and looked at him. Yi Mulin stared at her. His entire body was weak, but his gaze was especially bright and full of tenderness. Bai Shuili lowered her head and went to get the water. She said softly, It can only moisten my lips. He nodded. Their interaction made Yi Zhengang uncomfortable. He stared at his son. Mulin, you think about when you on. There's no conflict. Yi Mulin whispered. Dad, you said Uncle Hao and my mother. What's wrong? Yi Zhengang felt that his son did it on purpose. Didn't he hear it clearly just now? Why did he have to say that he was a cuckold? But no matter what, he still said, Your mother wants to be with Hao Yun. Hao Yun can't stay. Yi Mulin looked at his father and said calmly, You have someone else. Why don't you let go? No one will be in a difficult position. Yi Zhengang was stunned. Mulin, what did you say? Yi Mulin whispered, I want my mother to be happy. It was probably a man's idea. In Yi Mulin's heart, his mother needed to be protected. The only time he begged his mother was for Shueli. That time, his mother broke up with his father for them. This time, he chose to protect her and Hao Yun. Yi Zhengang was furious. He paced back and forth in the ward. He stopped and looked at his son. Mulin, are you crazy? She's your mother. How could you let her be with another man? A man who watched you grow up. He is like my mother for many years. Yi Mulin was unusually calm. Yi Zhengang carefully looked at his son and suddenly realized, Mulin, did you already know? Yi Mulin thought for a moment and nodded. Yes, I can tell that for a long time. Ever since Hao Yun gave him the first book, he had known about it. However, he never pointed out because Hao Yun's love and persistence towards his mother was something that his mother deserved. A woman was not destined to love only one man after giving birth to a child. If the man wasn't good, the woman could still find a new relationship, and Hao Yun happened to be the most suitable person. Yi Zhengang stared at his son with a strange gaze. After a long time, he whispered, You are very good. Mulin, are you taking revenge on me? Never. Yi Mulin whispered. I just feel that if you still love her, you should give her happiness. Bullshit. Yi Zhengang cursed. He was so angry that he was panting. What kind of theory is that? Yi Mulin, you are really good. He turned around. I will kill him now. I want to see who else your mother can be happy with. Chapter 3548. Yi Zhengang bellowed. You're rebelling. Who's your father? Yi Mulin gently lifted the blanket. His movements were extremely slow, but every slight movement made people feel shocked. Bai Shueli pressed down on his hand. You can't get off the bed. He grabbed her hand and used the strength of her hand to stand up. When he stood on the ground, his body was a little unstable and swayed for a moment, but he immediately stabilized himself. Step by step, he walked towards Yi Zhengang and finally stood face to face. One was furious, the other was incomparably weak. They were father and son, but at this moment, they were opposing each other. In terms of aura, no one was weaker than the other. Yi Mulin looked at his father and said word by word, I want to protect my mother, so you can't touch Hao Yun. Yi Zhengang squinted his eyes. Your mother is still my wife. How can she be with Hao Yun? What about Xian Ning? Yi Mulin said coldly. What is her role in your marriage? Yi Zhengang clenched his fists. Mulin is different. I have never thought of divorce. Betrayal is betrayal. What's the difference? Yi Mulin's face was as pale as paper, and he only gave his father one sentence. In mother's heart, her perfect world has long been destroyed. Yi Zhenggang's body swayed. His expression was extremely ugly. He looked at his son in disbelief. Mulin, don't you want me to reconcile with your mother? I do, but I want her to be happy. Yi Mulin said as he held onto his lower abdomen. Bai Shueli wanted to go forward to help him up, but was gently pushed away by him. He stared at his father and said firmly, Let her go. Yi Zhengang chuckled. What about you? Would you rather watch Bai Shueli get married? Watch her get together with someone else? Mulin, what's the difference between us? Why are you making things difficult for father? Yi Mulin's eyes were bloodshot. Dad, don't you know if I betrayed her or not? Under such a strong pressure, Yi Zhengang was actually a little afraid. This son of his actually didn't retreat at all. He wanted to fight to the death with him. Yi Zhengang glared at his son. Yi Mulin did not retreat. Bai Shueli stood beside him and did not say a word. She vaguely understood something. Biting her lips, she looked at Yi Mulin. His words kept echoing in her mind. Dad, don't you know if I betrayed her or not? What did he mean? Her eyes were a little misty, and she didn't dare to think further. Yi Zhengang sighed. Mulin, are you threatening me? I wouldn't dare. Yi Mulin smiled bitterly. How would I dare? Dad, you can make me suffer a fate worse than death with just a few tricks. You can also make my mother suffer a fate worse than death and lock her up in a cage for the rest of her life. How we dare? All of us live under your power, including Mubai. Yi Zhengang was completely defeated by these words. He closed his eyes. Is that how you all think of me? Yi Mulin did not answer, but gave him an extremely complicated expression. Yi Zhengang did not stay any longer and stumbled out. When he walked to the door, he held onto the door frame and said bleakly, "Moulin, believe it or not, the only person I have ever loved in this life is your mother." After saying that, he gritted his teeth and left. Chapter 35:49. "Help me to lie down on the bed," he said hoarsely. "Oh." She hurriedly helped him over and took care of him carefully. After Yi Mulin lay down, the gauze under his lower abdomen started to bleed. He was afraid that she would be scared, so he said with difficulty in a calm tone, "Go and call the doctor." Bai Shuili stared at him and asked softly, "Are you okay?" He looked up at her with a gentle gaze. Bai Shuili ran over to call the doctor, but she turned back after taking 2 steps. She knelt on the bed and hugged him carefully before running away. Yi Mulin's face was very pale, but he looked at her back as she ran away and smiled very lightly. He smiled blissfully. "Bai Shuili, you silly girl." He had never betrayed her, but he wished that all the pain she had suffered in the past had never happened, including the unborn child. He closed his eyes to hide the pain in his dark eyes. The doctor came very soon, and Bai Shuili was beside him with a nervous face. The doctor checked and said softly, "The wound is a little bleeding, but it's okay. You just need to change the dressing." With that said, the nurse handed over the tools. After the doctor changed the dressing quickly, he still advised, "Bossy, it's better not to get off the bed these 2 days. It's better to rest quietly. If you work, it's best to rest for half a month. Normally, you need to rest for a month. Your health is the most important. Don't overwork yourself." Yi Mulin grunted heavily. Bai Shuili reminded him, "The doctor said that I need a month before I can work." Yi Mulin glanced at her and smiled lightly. He had always been good-looking. Even now, when he was sick, he still looked good when he smiled. Bai Shuili looked at him and said pitifully. Yi Mulin lay down and looked at her gently. "Shuili, go make some porridge for me. Do you know how to make porridge now?" "Yes." She bit her lip. The nurse's heart softened a little. Bossier's voice when he called Shuili was really nice to hear. The doctor took the nurse away. There were only Yi Mulin and Bai Shuili in the ward. She was making porridge in the kitchen. Her voice was soft, but he felt very happy when he heard it. Yi Mulin lay down and fell asleep unknowingly. Bai Shuili saw that he had fallen asleep after making the porridge. She didn't wake him up, wanting him to sleep a little longer. She sat by the bed and looked at him. She couldn't control her hand and gently stroked his eyebrows. She heard that sentence again. "Don't you know if I have ever betrayed her?" She bit her lip and her fingers traced from his handsome eyebrows to his straight nose and then to his lips. His lips were thin but delicately shaped, and when he kissed her in anger they were strangely cold, but at other times they were strangely hot and as volatile as his temper. Bai Shuili of the words, "By my feelings." Yi. His dark eyes stared at her, and his voice was extremely hoarse. "What are your thoughts?" Startled, she met his eyes and stammered, "What feelings can I have? I don't have any feelings at all." I, 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 I of, Yi, she said. She. Chapter 35:50. He looked at her and smiled. "You'll feed me?" She stuttered again and stared at his face. Then, as if she had made up her mind, she said, I'll feed you." She helped him sit up and gave him a pillow. She took the porridge and sat beside him to feed him. Yi Mulin drank a bowl of porridge quietly. She asked him if he wanted more. He stared at her and said quietly, "Yes." Bai Shuili blushed and bit her lip as she stared at him. Yi Mulin smiled. "But I can't do much in my current state, right?" She didn't say anything. She cleaned up the bowl and ate something simple herself. He asked her to come over. She hesitated for a moment, but still went over and sat on the sofa beside the bed. Yi Mulin looked at her and said in a low voice, "What do you think of my mother and Hao Yun?" She widened her eyes and didn't say anything. He knew that she didn't want to say anything because they were divorced, so he smiled. "They're good. People need love in life." "What about you?" She finally asked. "Are you in love with Wen Yuan?" Yi Mulin's gaze was deep as he stared at her. After a long time, he smiled faintly. By Xueli, you already know the answer, don't you? He reached out and asked her to come over. She didn't want to go over, but she was afraid that he would get up, so she went over. He asked her to lie on the edge of his bed. His cold fingers caressed her as if she was his beloved pet, and his voice was very low. Yeah? She wanted to look up, but he didn't let her. He just pressed her down and said in a low voice, Xueli, remember what I said today, okay? She was a little dazed, not knowing if she should remember anything. Yun didn't say much. He just let go of her and made a call to Hao Yun. After that, he made a few more calls. After putting down the phone, he stared at Bai Xueli's sparkling eyes. I must protect Hao Yun, not only for my mother, but also for myself. Bai Xueli's voice was dry. You also want to climb up? So, she wanted to protect Hao Yun? Yun looked at her and didn't deny it. Yes, if I tried my best to climb up, without Hao Yun, it would probably take me twice as long. He switched to another topic. Hao Yun is more useful to me than the one family. He didn't expect her to understand what he meant, but Bai Xueli did. He was saying that Wen Yuan was just a stepping stone for him to climb higher. But you're being unfair to Wen Yuan, she said in a small voice. She had long forgotten that she and Wen Yuan were rivals in love. Yun smiled faintly. So what? Bai Xueli was stunned for a long time before she mustered up her courage and whispered, Then, will you sleep with her? After asking the question, she felt that it was pointless, so she lowered her eyes and didn't speak. Yun let go of her, stared at her for a while, and then smiled. Then, do you want me to sleep with her? She said nothing. He changed his question. Will you be angry if I sleep with her? She looked up and saw his smiling eyes. After a long time, she shook her head. I don't know. You will be angry if you don't know. He smiled weakly. Don't worry, I can't do anything now. Chapter 35:51. After she finished speaking, Yun looked at her with a faint smile. There was a hint of amusement in his eyes. Bai Xueli felt a little helpless. She bit her lower lip. Well, I didn't mean that. Then what do you mean? Do you want me to sleep with her? He asked in a low voice. She looked straight at him and stood up stiffly. I'm going to the washroom. He held her hand. Bai Xueli looked down. He was looking at her. I don't want to answer this question, she said in a low voice. Why? There's no why. She was a little annoyed. Yun, let go of me. But he did not let go of her hand. You asked me. Bai Xueli was furious. But you didn't answer me. He looked at her, but she didn't speak. She looked back at him stubbornly. After a long time, he said, I won't. Bai Xueli was stunned. Are you satisfied? He smiled and closed his eyes. I'm going to sleep for a while. Don't go away. She looked down at him, holding her hand. She was in a daze. He said in a low voice, lie with me for a while. When he used force, she naturally lay down. She wanted to refuse, but she was afraid that she would hurt him, so she had to lie down with him. The ward was very quiet. He was probably too tired and fell asleep. Bai Xueli bit her lip. After a long time, she felt that he had fallen asleep. So she leaned over and put her face on his shoulder. She gently hugged him. This little hug seemed to be stolen, because he might be Wen Yuan's husband in the future. He said that he wouldn't sleep with Wen Yuan, but they were engaged and married. Wouldn't they sleep for the rest of their lives? That was unrealistic. Bai Xueli felt a dull pain in her heart. She told herself that she shouldn't have loved him anymore. She shouldn't have. She closed her eyes and buried her face in his. She deeply inhaled his scent. It was very warm. Wen Yuan stood at the door and looked at everything in the ward quietly. Yimu Bai said softly, Do you still want to be engaged to him? Wen Yuan, some men love a woman for a lifetime. You know the reason. Why do you still want to continue? Wen Yuan looked down. He's the most suitable person for me. Suitable? Yimu Bai said in a low voice. Wen Yuan, I thought you were very smart. Wen Yuan lowered his head. After a long time, he whispered, He needs me. He needs you because of Bai Xueli. Can you see that? He's very happy with her, even when he's sick. Do you know how long it's been since he's had a good night's sleep? It's all because of her. Everything he does is for Bai Xueli. Even if Xueli doesn't know and misunderstands him, he's still the same because of love. Wen Yuan looked at him and smiled sadly. As long as he needs me. Yimu Bai cursed, stupid as hell. He turned around and left. It was rare for him to lose his temper. Wen Yuan also left. At this moment, it was a world between the two of them that she could not interfere with. She still had this bit of self-awareness. After Wen Yuan and Yi Mubai left, Yi Mulin opened his eyes and looked quietly in the direction of the door. He lowered his head and kissed by Xueli, who was in his arms. He closed his eyes and rubbed her fluffy little head. His voice was hoarse and hoarse. Xueli. By Xueli, she had been sleeping. He was the patient, but she slept more soundly than him. Chapter 35:52. Yi Mulin immediately fell asleep with her. He was too tired and he needed a rest. Therefore, he really rested for a week in the hospital. In addition to eating, he slept. Of course, he slept with Bai Xueli. There was a rumor in the hospital that Yi Mulin had a super doting Xiaoqing. Even when he was sick, he stayed in bed all day. Even his real girlfriend stood aside and didn't pay attention to him at all. Moreover, when everyone went in and out of Yi Mulin's ward, Yi Mulin was awake while Xiaoqing was asleep. How could Yi Mulin be so tired when he was sick? The rumor spread, but the ward was like another world, warm and sweet. Yi Mulin was discharged from the hospital a week later and returned to the house of Sinan Mansion. He still had to rest for a few days, but Hao Yun came to deliver the official documents every morning and evening. Bai Xueli calculated that Yi Mulin would work more than 8 hours a day at home, so she went to deliver a plate of fruit after Hao Yun left. She put the plate in front of him and didn't leave. Yi Mulin sat behind the desk and flipped through the files. He didn't raise his head but just lowered it and asked, "What's wrong?" Bai Xueli walked to the table and pushed the plate forward. "You haven't moved for a long time." He smiled and said, "The doctor told me to move less." She stared at him and bit her lip. That's not what he meant. Dr. Li said that you should rest these days and can't work. Yi Mulin put down the documents in his hand and sighed. "I don't do these things. No one can do them for me." She stared at him. "Then tell me, are you happy now?" She seemed to be ignited. She picked up the documents and stared at his eyes. "Tell me, are you tired of these boring things all day? Do you like reading these things? Are you tired of living?" Xueli. His voice was deep and slow. "Don't mess around. Put it down. These are official documents." "I won't put it down." She looked into his eyes stubbornly. "You weren't like this in the past. What happened to you, Yi Mulin? What happened to us?" She took a step back. "I don't understand. If you divorce me, at least one of you will have a better life. But I see you working like this every day. It's even harder than when I was serving others in those clothes. I feel like you've been raped by this so-called ambition and power. Yi Mulin, tell me, is this really the life you want?" As she spoke, tears streamed down her cheeks. However, he was still sitting there coldly and nobly, just like the Yi Mulin she knew. He slowly said, "It seems like you've been thinking a lot about me recently." She kept silent and looked at him. Yi Mulin smiled faintly. His pupils deepened and his voice trembled with a different kind of low sexiness. "Whether I don't like it or don't want it, I have to accept it. Bai Xueli, if you want to ask me if I'm happy." He stood up slowly and walked to her side. He paused for a moment and put his hands on her shoulders. He smiled and said, "I'll be happier when you're by my side." Bai Xueli looked up. She looked a little nervous. She didn't understand what he said, but she understood what he said. He was happy when she was by his side. Her throat tightened. She said softly, "Yi Mulin, we can't go back." Chapter 35:53. She bit her lip and wanted to leave, but Yi Mulin caught her hand. She turned to look at him. "What are you doing?" He smiled. "Didn't you complain that I always work and don't accompany you?" Her eyes widened and she took a step back, but he pulled her again. She couldn't leave and could only be dragged into his arms. "I didn't." The tip of his nose moved forward and easily touched hers. His masculine scent also enveloped her body, leaving her with nowhere to escape. His palm was flat on the back of her waist, and he pulled her closer. His voice was huskier. "That's what it means to a man." I really didn't. She probably felt some subtle changes in his body. She felt a little dangerous and wanted to escape, but Yi Mulin didn't let her. He hugged her, his voice husky against the side of her neck. "Did you miss me, huh?" She bit her lip. "No." He kissed the back of her ear, and his thin lips moved to the corner of her mouth. "But I missed you." With that, he kissed her. She didn't want to. She was afraid that his wound would burst. So she put her hands on his shoulders and said, "Don't, it'll burst." He kissed her for a while, and she retreated until she was against the sofa. He covered her and bit her chin. "I'll explode if you keep holding on." He pulled her hand, but she didn't want to. He chuckled and kissed her, trying to seduce her. However, no matter how he seduced her, she refused. Her eyes were watery, and she almost cried and begged him. "No, you'll get hurt." He was still teasing her. "You'll feel bad if I get hurt, right?" She bit her lip and couldn't say anything for a long time. She closed her eyes and looked very pitiful. Yumulin still got what he wanted. She was very nervous and couldn't let go. He kissed her. "When will you end like this, huh?" She closed her eyes, and her voice was broken. Yumulin let go. No. He chuckled. "I can't." He picked her up and let her sit in his arms. She was very embarrassed, and she looked a little lost and pitiful. He kissed her and whispered in her ear, "By Shueli, don't hurt me." Her mind was in a mess with an indescribable feeling. Then she stared at him blankly. Yumulin did nothing but kiss her and let her hair down. Her black hair fell smoothly on her neck, making her look especially charming and beautiful. She parted her lips and said hoarsely, "Yumulin." His dark eyes were like a deep pool of water, so deep that she could not see the bottom. She was immersed in it and could not escape. Suddenly, she burst into tears. She laid on his shoulder and punched him with her fists. Her body twitched as she cried, "Yumulin, you bastard." She was indignant, she was angry, and she hated him, but she still loved him. Love, also hate. Yumulin exhaled with difficulty. He reached out and pressed her down, murmuring softly, "Don't cry." What should I do if you cry like this?" He didn't want to tell her that if she cried like this, it would only make the man want to bully her even more. He couldn't bear it anymore. He hugged her and whispered in her ear, "You do it, or should I do it?" She was at a loss. "I might get hurt." He smiled. He gave her a choice. It seemed to be very democratic, but in fact, it was very despicable. Chapter 35:54. When it was over, she lay on his shoulder and refused to get up. Her whole body was soft, and she was crying softly. She cried so much that he wanted to do it again. Yumulin closed his eyes and went through all the documents that he had read today. Only then did he suppress the thoughts that he shouldn't have. He lowered his head and looked at her soft face. He coaxed her softly. "What's wrong?" Her arms wrapped around his neck. She hugged him and refused to make a sound. However, her body was still trembling. "Shweli." He took off her body and held her face. "Are you feeling unwell?" Her lips were trembling. She couldn't say a word. Yumulin roughly understood what she was thinking. He hugged her with one hand and used the other to tidy up the tissues for her. She half closed her eyes and rested her head on his shoulder. She said, "Yumulin, we will go to hell." She had once asked him if he would abandon the Yi family for her, since she had abandoned the Bai family. He said he wouldn't. But now, she has completely abandoned the Bai clan. She has abandoned her clan. She has fallen into eternal damnation. Yumulin lowered his head and found her lips. He kissed her forcefully. After kissing for a long time, he let go of her and murmured beside her lips, "When we are together, hell is also heaven." She opened her eyes and looked at him helplessly. He said not to be afraid. He would always be by her side. She cried and suddenly hugged his neck. She kept saying that this wasn't right and that they shouldn't be together. He hugged her and said slowly and firmly, "We will always be together." Later, she fell asleep. He guarded her and covered her with a blanket. He slept on the sofa. He wanted to read the documents again. He sat at his desk and spaced out for a while. Baishweli asked him if he was happy and if he liked her. He didn't tell her that if the price of being with her was not happiness, he would choose to be like this forever. Picking up the document, he read it bit by bit until he received a call. It was from Secretary Lee, sounding panicked. "Bossy, someone from B City has taken Secretary Hao away. They're on their way to the airport now." Yumulin held his phone and was silent for a while. Of course, He knew that this was the result of his father's consideration after returning to Bee City for a week. In the end, he couldn't stand his mother's empathy and couldn't accept the fact that Su Fu liked another man. Yulin didn't know how far their relationship had progressed, but he knew that it must be something serious for his father to be this angry. He gripped his phone tightly and said calmly, "Don't tell anyone about this. I'll go to the airport immediately." Secretary Lee said worriedly, "But your health?" Yulin's voice was a little bitter. "I'm fine." He hung up the phone and stood up. When he passed by Xiueli, he paused. After a moment of silence, he bent over and kissed her. His voice was a little low. "People who love each other should stay together, right?" He took his coat and walked out of the villa. When he walked out of the villa, his face was cold, as if the intense love half an hour ago was just an illusion. He drove his own car at 150 kilometers per hour. When he arrived at the airport, he happened to intercept the people from Bee City. Yulin knew all four of them. They were people that Yi Zhonggang often ordered around. Yulin's arrival made the few of them feel a little helpless. However, they still braced themselves and went forward. "Young master, why are you here? Old Yi is worried about your health." Chapter 35:55. When Yulin said that, the four of them looked as if they had eaten shit. If anything happened to young master, they wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility. If they didn't handle this well, they would also die. Just as the four of them were hesitating, Hao Yun said, "Yulin, let me go back. Nothing will happen." Yulin took a step forward and glanced at the few men. Then, he said casually, "I want to speak to Secretary General Hao alone. Step back." Hao Yun stared at him. Yulin, on the other hand, looked at those people and shouted in a low voice, "Get lost." The few of them touched their noses and could only leave. Yulin then turned to look at Hao Yun. He paused for a long time before saying, "I know you have something on my father, and you will use it to threaten him. But Uncle Hao, I know you too well. You should know my father well too. He will always have a heart of stone, but you can't." Hao Yun's expression changed. Yulin smiled bitterly. He can even be cruel to himself, let alone others. So, if you can't bear to be cruel, don't use this to threaten him. Otherwise, it won't be a lose-lose situation. In the end, you'll be the one who gets hurt. My mother and I might live in pain for the rest of her life. Hao Yun's voice was a little pained. "Yulin, I'll go back to Bee City with you," Yulin said firmly. "Also, I'm not doing this just for you. My mother isn't young anymore. Are you going to make her wait?" After Yulin said that, Hao Yun looked at him suspiciously. "Yulin, are you going to sacrifice yourself in exchange? Everything is temporary." Yulin's voice was firm. Then, he boarded the plane. "Let's go. I have to come back tomorrow morning. Xiueli is at home, and you have to come back with me. I can't leave you here." Hao Yun was speechless and didn't know what to say. That night, Yulin flew to Bee City. When Xiueli woke up, he wasn't there. There were documents in the study that he had flipped open. It was late at night, and she was a little lost. She walked over and sat beside his desk. There was a white piece of paper with a line of words written on it. "Return to Bee City tomorrow morning." It was signed by Yulin. She stared at it blankly, then tore off the page and gently folded it into the shape of an airplane. Opening the window, the cold night wind blew in her face. She threw the plane into the darkness, and the small piece of white paper flew out until she could no longer see it. Bee City's night house was like a storm. Yi Zhonggang met his adulterer, Hao Yun, and also met his good son. He was really a good son of Su Fu. He had just been discharged from the hospital for a few days, and he had returned to Bee City with injuries. He wanted to clear the name of his mother and his mother's adulterer. He was not young anymore, but he still found himself a stepfather. Wasn't he ashamed? Yi Zhonggang ignored Hao Yun and directly brought Yulin into the study. When Yulin entered the study room, Chi-Chi found that the things in the study room had been smashed to the ground. It was obvious that his mother had provoked his father quite a bit. As soon as Yulin entered, he hooked his lips and dropped another heavy bomb. "Xia Anning, I've dealt with it." Yi Zhonggang was already angry. His hands were on his waist. At this moment, his eyes almost popped out because of anger. He immediately went forward and grabbed Yulin's collar. His hoarse voice was furious. "What did you say?" Xie Anning has been dealt with. Not in jail, but dealt with. She died in an accident. Yu Mulin's voice was calm. His expression was as simple as killing a chick. An accident. She personally went to command and died on the spot. She will be given the honor after her death. This is the best result, isn't it? Yi Zhengang's hands were still holding his son's collar tightly. He also saw that there were some bruises on his son's neck. He sneered. It seemed that he had recovered very well. He forcefully let go and glared at Yu Mulin. Why did you do this? His voice was almost a low roar. Chapter 35:56. Yi Zhengang's face darkened. But Xie Anning shouldn't have done this. Yes, she shouldn't have done this. Yu Mulin's eyes darkened. But she suffered because of you. Because I can't do anything to you. I can only wrong her. Yi Zhengang's face changed completely. He stared at his son. Mulin, in your heart, what is the relationship between us? Yi Mulin smiled bitterly. Father, you should know the answer better than me, right? Yi Zhengang was forced to retreat again and again in the face of such a gaze and words, and he felt an unconcealable sense of disappointment. He said dejectedly, Why are you making things difficult for her? It's me who let your mother down. It's fine as long as you say that. Yi Mulin said calmly, I must take Uncle Hao away unless you want to see the Yi family destroyed. Yi Zhengang stared at his son and got angry again. What do you want to do, Mulin? Are you crazy? Yi Mulin took out a stack of documents and threw it on the table. He said calmly, If I exchange the future of the Yi family for my mother's marriage, you're the one who wins. Yi Zhengang's eyes fell on the stack of documents. He was so angry that his whole body was trembling. Then he looked at the son he was so proud of and slapped him. This was the second time he slapped his son. The first time was for Bai Shiuli, and the second time was for Su Fu. This son of his was always going against his father for the sake of a woman. This was really infuriating. Yi Zhengang was angry. After slapping him, Yi Mulin was still unmoved. He looked at his father and said resolutely, If the Yi family is destroyed, I can take Shui Li and mother abroad. But you have nothing. Do you hate me that much? Yi Zhengang's voice was harsh. Just for Bai Shiuli? I'll kill Bai Shiuli in prison right now. Then you have no way out. You can do that. You don't have to worry about me. A storm was brewing on Yi Mulin's face. Dad, there's nothing I can't sacrifice. But if you dare to move, I'll make you regret it for the first time in decades. Yi Mulin's finger lightly tapped on the document. He paused for a moment and said in an extremely indifferent tone, We all live within these rules. Regardless of whether it's the person who made the rules or others, we all have to abide by them. You are no exception. As he spoke, he turned around and walked out. The wound on his lower abdomen hurt faintly, but he didn't feel dispirited at all and walked straight out. He could not fall. Right now, he was the only one who could fight against his father, Yi Zhengang. He walked towards his mother's bedroom. When Su Fu saw him, he was shocked. Mulin. Yi Mulin's expression became gentle. Mom, come back to H-City with me in the future. There were tears in Su Fu's eyes. Mulin, you don't blame me? What's there to blame for pursuing one's own happiness? He walked over and gently caressed his mother's hair. He said gently, Can we start over? There will be no Xie and Ning in the future. Su Fu's lips trembled. She looked at her son in disbelief. In the past, Mulin wouldn't do this. He was a lawyer. Using violence to fight violence was not his style, but now he was. Chapter 35:57. Therefore, he didn't care about using Wen Yuan. He didn't care that Wen Yuan would be worse in the future. He only knew that Shirley and his mother were the people he had to protect. Nothing else mattered. He protected his weak mother and went downstairs. He only put a coat on her and didn't take anything else. Oh, she also brought a small box, which was full of books and gift from Hao Yun. As for Yi Zhengang's things, she didn't take anything with her. The decades of love between husband and wife were gone. It made people sigh. Downstairs, Yi Zhengang watched Su Fu being carried downstairs by Yi Mulin. His face was ashen and his voice was trembling. Su Fu, are you really leaving? At this time, the bodyguards had left. There was only a few of them. There was nothing that couldn't be said. Su Fu looked at him and Hao Yun beside him. Yi Zhengang's voice was heavy. We have been husband and wife for so many years. Don't you give me any chance? Is it really not as good as the 1 year you have with him? Su Fu, let's forget about the past and start over, okay? Su Fu's expression was a little blank. She shook her head gently. You are too heartless, Yi Zhengang. You are really too heartless. Yi Zhengang looked at her eyes, which were bloodshot. He chuckled. Am I heartless? Su Fu, you are not heartless. You're going to leave me for an insignificant man. What can he give you? He is just a small secretary general. He can never climb as high as me. He can never give you a noble identity. He can't let you become the glorious Madame Yi. Are you used to that kind of life? Or did he overestimate himself and pursue you? He wants to get the property under your name. Have you ever thought that you don't want to become a brainless Su Fu after living a comfortable life all your life? He finished speaking in one breath. Su Fu smiled faintly. Glory. I was very glorious in the past, but I've also tasted the most embarrassing feeling. Yi Zhengang, these are all given to me by you, whether good or bad. After Su Fu finished speaking, she looked exhausted. She lowered her head and whispered, I won't love you anymore. Zhengang, you actually understand me, don't you? Yi Zhengang looked at her and smiled sadly. He understood her. She was a woman who needed to be loved with all her heart. She was not clingy. She was elegant like an orchid, but she needed love to support her. She was also tenacious. Once she realized that his love was no longer there, she would immediately leave him without hesitation. She was Su Fu, the naturally arrogant Su Fu, who had the capital and was completely different from a woman like Xie Ning. She did not care about Mrs. Ye's reputation. Yes, after leaving him, Yi Zhengang, she was rich and beautiful, and there were still many men who wanted her, even if they were younger than her. Yi Zhengang closed his eyes. Then what about after that? You and Hao Yun will be together. Can he afford to raise you? I don't need anyone to support me. Su Fu whispered, then looked at his son. Let's go. She walked down the stairs step by step. When she passed by Yi Zhengang, he immediately grabbed her arm and said with a deep and painful voice, Su Fu. Su Fu paused for a moment, then lowered his eyes. Let go, Yi Zhengang. We have reached the end. Without Xie Ning or Hao Yun, we will not be able to reach the end. She looked at him with a hint of sorrow on her face. The person I loved in the past no longer exists. Chapter 35:58. After a long time, he finally said, I can change it. These words were very humble. Su Fu gently shook her head. You can't go back. Yi Zhenggang's face was ashen as his fingers grabbed her tightly. In the past, when he had sex with Xie Anning for the first time, he was so high-spirited. At that time, he didn't think that his Su Fu was waiting for him at home. If there was a first time, there would be a second time, countless times. If he didn't think that way, if he could treat Su Fu like he did in the past, would she not leave him? There were too many ifs in Yi Zhenggang's heart, but he knew that there were no ifs with his Su Fu. What happened was what happened, and he wouldn't forgive her. In the future, she wouldn't be his Su Fu, but Hao Yun's. Thinking of this, he smiled bitterly. His fingers loosened, and Su Fu walked away from his fingertips. Yi Zhengang looked at his fingers and was confused for a while. After a long time, he came back to his senses. At that time, Su Fu was already standing beside Hao Yun, and the way she looked at Hao Yun broke his heart. His wife, who once belonged to him, fell in love with someone else. Yi Zhenggang's voice was sorrowful. If I don't let you go, none of you can leave. Yi Mulin slowly walked down and looked at Yi Zhengang. I will do as you say, but I have to take my mother away. Yi Zhengang held his breath. You mean when you on? Yi Mulin didn't say anything. Yi Zhengang smiled, and his smile was extremely miserable. After a long time, he called out to her, Su Fu, I still have a few words to say to you. He turned around and walked into the study. Su Fu looked at his back and followed him. Hao Yun held her hand, and she patted him. It's okay, don't worry. She slowly walked into the study and closed the door. Yi Zhengang stood by the bookshelf, took out an exquisite crystal music box, and opened it. Very beautiful Turkish music came from it. After listening for a while, he looked at her. It's for you. I brought it back from my business trip. I thought you would like it. Su Fu did not make a sound, nor did he reach out to take it. Yi Zhengang smiled miserably again. Do you only like the gifts from Hao Yin now? She said softly, we don't need to get involved anymore. Yi Zhengang was silent for a while, and then smiled faintly. I just wanted to see if you would be moved. It seems that I won't. He raised his hand and placed down the cabinet door. His fingers paused for a long time before he opened the cabinet door, as if he had made up his mind. He took out a document and gently placed it on the table. It was a divorce settlement. Su Fu was a little surprised. Yi Zhengang muttered, Su Fu, I thought that we would be able to reach the end of our lives. I've let you down, and I deserve it. The things you want to hear. After signing this, you can leave. I'll send them to you, or I'll have Mulin bring them to you. When he said these words, his tone was very flat, as if there was no fluctuation, but his voice was very deep. Su Fu reached out to take it, looked at it, and then signed it. There was no division of property in this agreement, because there was nothing to divide between the two parties. The only thing was feelings. At this time, Yi Zhengang knew that Su Fu never needed his things. She had her own wealth, but she didn't need power. When she was Madame Yi, she liked to do flowers and take care of the children at home. Chapter 35:59. Yi Zhengang pursed his lips and said in a low voice, If Hao Yin bullies you, come back and tell me. I'll help you fix him up. Also, don't agree to him too quickly. Men still have to be tested. He was like an old friend, but also like a worried parent. He had once thought that Su Fu was old, but at this moment, he felt that Su Fu was well protected. She was the one who was very young. No matter if it was him or Xianing, they were actually very old in their hearts. I know. Su Fu looked up at him. Thank you, Zhengang. He stared at her, his old eyes filled with reluctance. After a long time, he went over and hugged her. He said, Su Fu, I'm sorry. If we do it again, I'll treat you very well, but there was no next time. His Su Fu still left. With Hao Yun, he left B City that night. Yi Zhengang went to their former bedroom. She did not take anything with her, clothes, shoes, or jewelry. She did not want anything from Madame Yi, and she did not want it either. He sat on the bed and looked at everything around him, then closed his eyes. But when he closed his eyes, his mind was filled with the once young and lively Su Fu, who was leaning on the sofa with a book in his hand, waiting for him at the same time. It was also the first time he had sex with Su Fu. Although he was drunk, he woke up after that, and when he saw Su Fu waiting for him under the dim yellow light, he felt guilty. That night, Su Fu did not know what he had read in the book, but he was especially gentle. After taking care of him and lying on the bed, she hugged him. He did not give it to her for the first time, because he had already had it with other women, and he was powerless. He remembered that Su Fu's expression that night was a little mischievous. She said that he was old and that he was Uncle Yi. Su Fu, your Uncle Yi betrayed you that night. Yi Zhengang laid on the bed. The light was dazzling. He reached out to cover his eyes, and then tears flowed down from the corner of his eyes. Su Fu, no longer. H City. Early in the morning, Secretary Li was waiting anxiously at the airport. When the plane finally landed, she immediately went up to him and asked, Boss Yi, are you all right? Yi Mulin nodded lightly. I'm fine. Have you done what I asked you to do? Secretary Li nodded. Well, I've rented an apartment in Sinan Mansion. It's 120 square meters. It's enough for Madam. Because Yi Mulin would return to B City sooner or later, they didn't have any property in H City. Yi Mulin nodded and looked at his mother. Uncle Hao used to live in the office, but it's not convenient now. Shirley also lives in Sinan residence. You can go and chat with her when you're bored, but don't do her laundry. Don't spoil her. Su Fu thought it was inappropriate. I'll stay with you. Hao Yin did not utter a word. He was quite patient. Yi Mulin smiled. Shueli's temper isn't very good right now. It's more convenient for us to live separately. Su Fu was speechless. Was this still the self-disciplined son? At this moment, Yi Mulin looked at Secretary Li. Get the driver to send Hao Mi Zhang and my mother to the apartment. You take them there. and I'll drive back myself. Secretary Lee was worried. Your body, it's fine, he said lightly. I'll be fine after a nap. Chapter 3560. Secretary Lee didn't say anything and asked the driver to drive to Sinan Mansion. The car drove far away. She saw Yemulin's car, still parked there in the rearview mirror. After a long time, Secretary Lee finally withdrew her gaze and didn't say anything. Su Fu and Hao Yun, who were sitting in the back seat, didn't say anything either. The relationship between them was a little uncomfortable. After more than an hour, the black limousine stopped downstairs in an apartment in Sinan Mansion. The apartment rented by Secretary Lee was about 5 minutes away from Yi Mulin and by Xiueli's apartment. It was neither too far nor too close. The car door opened. Secretary Lee helped Su Fu to go upstairs, and Hao Yun followed them. Secretary Lee knew what to do. He stopped when he saw Su Fu off. He handed the keys to Su Fu and said, "I'll pay for the water and electricity here. There's nothing else. I still have to go to work." After she finished speaking, she looked at her boss, Hao Yun. Hao Yun coughed softly. "Thank you. Secretary Hao, remember to raise my salary," Secretary Lee said a little playfully. Then she said goodbye and left. As soon as she left, the house suddenly became empty. It was too quiet. Su Fu looked at Hao Yun and licked her lower lip. "Let me have a look here." Hao Yun nodded. "I will go to the kitchen to make a bowl of noodles for you." Su Fu was taken aback for a moment before he smiled. "All right." She turned around and walked into the living room. Hao Yun suddenly stopped her. "Su Fu, are you sure you want to be with me? I may quit this circle in a few years. Tsinghua University has been inviting me to teach. I may be a poor teacher in the future." Su Fu looked at him and smiled. "Can you ask him if there's a lack of a Chinese teacher there?" This time, it was Hao Yun who was stunned. Su Fu walked over and gently touched his arm. "Didn't you say to go downstairs?" "Hao Yun, I am hungry." He looked down at her, and it was as if he was looking at the younger Su Fu again. He gently patted the back of her hand and turned to the kitchen. Secretary Lee was indeed thoughtful. Not only did she rent the apartment, but she also filled the kitchen utensils and even the fridge. Hao Yun took the ingredients and made tomato and egg noodles. On the other side, Su Fu briefly looked around. The place was not very big, but the decoration was very exquisite, which was also her favorite style. After she finished looking around, she walked back to the kitchen. Hao Yun was putting noodles into 2 bowls. She gently hugged him from behind and said in a low voice, "Hao Yun, it's good here." Hao Yun felt her face against his back. He could feel her orchid scent through the thick coat. His heart and body were a little restless, but he held it back. He didn't want her to think that he was an impatient man when they just got together. Although he longed, Hao Yun turned around. "It's good that you like it." He brought the noodles to the dining table and helped her sit down. He said softly, "H City might stay for another year or 2 before Mulin is transferred back to B City. At that time, the struggle would be the most serious, and now, it was just the beginning." As an insider and an outsider, Hao Yun could clearly see that Mulin did not like Zi's governance, but people had to think for themselves. Through Xia Anning's matter, Hao Yun had already seen Yi Mulin's change. In the past, Yi Mulin would not have made a move, but now he was really ruthless. Chapter 3561. Hao Yun knew what she meant, so he put his hand on the back of her hand. "He's not doing it for us. He's just doing it for the big picture. You'll know in the future. He'll be with Shirley." Su Fu looked down. "I'm not interested in that, but it's not like I don't understand it at all. I know that Mulin wants to replace or even surpass his father's position, but can Shirley understand how many years it will take? Can she wait? I'm really afraid that she won't understand Mulin." Hao Yun smiled. "I've waited for so many years, haven't I?" Su Fu didn't know what to say. She whispered, "Let's eat the noodles. It's getting cold." Hao Yun had been single for a long time, so his cooking skills were very good. Su Fu felt very warm when she ate. After eating, she wanted to wash the dishes, but Hao Yun didn't let her. He said that he couldn't guarantee a rich life, but he couldn't guarantee that she could do the housework. Tomorrow, he would find a housekeeper to come over. When he was washing the dishes, Su Fu leaned against him and whispered, I used to do this. I also wash clothes. When Shirley just got married, I washed clothes for her. Hao Yun turned his head in surprise. Really? She nodded. Yes, I'll wash for you in the future. But can you not find anyone else to come over? I don't like other people at home. If I'm really bored, I can talk to Shirley. Hao Yun's hand stopped moving. She looked at him. What's wrong with you? Hao Yun smiled bitterly. Su Fu, I can't help it if you lean on me like this. You go wash and sleep first. I'll smoke. Are you going to work later? Su Fu stared at him and asked. He thought for a moment, but still shook his head. Not today. Her expression seemed to have relaxed. Then, she gently hugged his waist and said in a very low voice, He and I have officially agreed on a divorce. You actually don't have to endure it. Hao Yun's body was very stiff. He stood there for a long time and couldn't say a word. After a long time, he looked down at her and said in a hoarse voice, Su Fu, I've never had a woman before. I might not do well. Su Fu buried her face in his shoulder and said softly, Will you be disappointed in me? I've given birth to 2 children. Hao Yun, I'm not perfect anymore. I might not be the Su Fu in your heart. She was on the verge of menopause. She couldn't give him that kind of perfect experience. He should find a young girl. Thinking of this, Su Fu wanted to escape. Hao Yun caught her and trapped her in her arms. She gently lifted her up and carried her all the way to the bed in the bedroom. He lay with her, not in a hurry to possess her. He looked down at her and gently kissed her cheeks and her chin. The lines of her face were very good. She didn't look like a person in her 50s at all. He kissed her like that for a long time before saying in a hoarse voice, In my heart, you will always be that Su Fu. The first time was always a bit messy. Fortunately, there was always someone who would understand. As their hair intertwined, they completed their first time. After it was over, Hao Yun hugged her tightly and kissed her hair. He whispered, Su Fu, you make me intoxicated. He never knew that this kind of thing was so wonderful. Her body was well maintained, and she was like a woman in her 30s. He was a little addicted. Chapter 3562. Ever since Su Fu got together with him, she had let her hair down and no longer tied it up, unless it was an important event. That was because Hao Yun said that he liked the way she let her hair down, and so she did that. However, she did not know that Hao Yun liked the way she let her hair down on the bed the most. Her black hair was spread on the pillow, and it was beautiful. That day, Hao Yun did not go to work and had been accompanying Su Fu the entire time. Later on, Su Fu could not take it anymore and urged him to go to work. He just smiled and pulled her into his arms. Let's rest then. I'll cook for you later. She replied softly, and he said worriedly, Su Fu and I might not have so many banquets to attend, and it might just be the daily necessities of an ordinary person. Of course, I know that you have the ability to live a better life, and I don't object to that. I'm not such a narrow-minded man, but I can really only give you the life of an ordinary person. Can you get used to it? Su Fu said faintly. What should I do? We've already slept together. Hao Yun pondered for a long time before he understood what she meant. He pinched her face. Say it again. Su Fu slapped his hand away. Sleeping together doesn't mean that you can bully me. For a moment, Hao Yun did not know what to say. Su Fu came over and hugged him. She placed her head on his shoulder gently and smiled. This is just right. Hao Yun, you just right too. She smiled faintly, like a spring breeze blowing across 10 miles. What she wanted was never power, but a man who understood her. After leaving Yizhenggang, what she pursued was still the same as 30 years ago, and she would not lower her requirements. Hao Yun was what she wanted, and she would never compromise. She only got together with him because she liked him and nothing else. Hao Yun was stunned. She raised her head and kissed him, closing her eyes. I'm a little tired, Hao Yun. Can you let me rest for a while? Hao Yun's throat was a little hoarse as he said, Okay. She fell asleep in his arms. He coaxed her, but she couldn't fall asleep immediately. He thought of a lot of things in the past. He thought of the time when he was studying at Tsinghua University. If he could start all over again, would he have the courage to confess to her? Would he have been the only one who could get her? Hao Yun smiled. It was a smile of relief. Just like what she said, Hao Yun was very good, just right, and the current Su-Fu was also very good. He was not less than before, and he was just as attractive as before, making him want to cherish him. In another villa of Sinan Mansion, in the morning, Yi Mulin's car was parked downstairs for about half an hour. He smoked a few cigarettes to disperse the hostility on his body, and then opened the door to get off. He pushed open the door of the villa. Shuli was sitting there, looking at him quietly. She was still wearing her pajamas. He was dumbfounded. "Why are you sitting here? The heater isn't on." He walked over and picked her up. She struggled for a while. "You've just recovered. I can walk by myself." But he seemed not to hear it. He held her straight and walked upstairs. After holding her in the quilt, he whispered, "You can't take care of yourself without me, huh?" She stared at him. "Are you tired?" Chapter 3563. Shuli was hugged by him for a long time before she came back to her senses. She bit her lip and suddenly pressed him against the headboard, her little hands unbuttoning his shirt. Yi Mulin misunderstood and lowered his head. "You want me, don't you?" Her little hands were still busy until she looked at his wound. After looking at it for a while, she quietly buttoned it for him and said softly, "I'm worried about you. I don't dare to sleep." He then realized that he was thinking too much and said hoarsely, "You've been waiting for me?" She nodded. "Are you back at B City? Is it tiring to rush here and there?" "Yeah, I'm very tired. I'll sleep for a while." He pulled her to lie down with him. He said that he was tired, but he couldn't fall asleep immediately after lying down. He said softly, "I brought my mom back." Shuli looked at him. "Where's she?" He looked at her. "She's with Uncle Hao. They will be together in the future." She was a little shocked and couldn't digest it for a while. Were they really together, just like that? She asked him softly, "How did your dad agree?" Yi Mulin lowered his head to look at her and didn't answer her question. She pursed her lips and didn't say anything. After a long time, he pulled her into his arms and rested his chin on her hair. He said softly, "Shuli, stay by my side. Don't think about running away or I won't let you go. Do you hear me?" She raised her head to look at him, but he didn't let her. He pressed down on her little head. Shuli bit her lower lip, lowered her head, and didn't say anything. She just stayed in his arms obediently. He was cold at first, but then he warmed up. He said, "Shuli, I don't want you to see me like this. But let me tell you, I will never become another Yi Zhengang, and you will never become Su-Fu. Do you understand what I mean?" She thought about it for a long time, but still didn't understand what he meant. She said directly, "I don't know." He seemed a little angry and then didn't say anything. She said, "Oh," and looked at him. Yi Mulin closed his eyes and said fiercely, "Sometimes I really want to strangle you. So do you want to go to jail or not?" She said softly. He opened his eyes and glared at her. Her voice became even softer. "I'm doing this for your own good." For the first time, he kissed her lips and whispered, "Shut up. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll strangle you to death." After being kissed by him for a long time, she finally pushed him away and anxiously said, I know. When he looked at her, there was always a hint of anticipation. She said, "I know what you mean. You're saying we won't divorce, right?" He looked at her reservedly and said nothing. Shuli bit her lip and said, "But we're already divorced, and you have when you want." Yi Mulin's face darkened, and he sneered, "Shuli, your understanding is really high and mighty." He turned around and ignored her. He seemed to be angry. She stared at his back for a long time. First, she lay flat and sulked. What she said was the truth. In fact, the conflict between them was even more than that between Yi Zhengang and Su-Fu. Did he think that it would disappear just because he said a few words? Wen Yuan wouldn't disappear either. She wasn't wrong, but he didn't say anything for a long time. She was still worried, and her heart softened. She leaned over and hugged his back. "Are you really angry?" Chapter 3564. Yi Mulin ignored her for a long time. She got a little anxious and climbed over him to the other side, hugging him from the front. This time, she didn't say anything and just hugged him. He would only get angry if she talked anyway. She hugged him like a rascal. After a long time, Yi Mulin looked down at her and said in a low voice, "Shuli, If it's possible, I won't divorce you. I won't let you cry. After he said that, he felt a little depressed and didn't say anything else. Baishuali hugged his arm tighter. Silently, she pressed her face against his chest and felt the warmth there. His heartbeat was very steady, which made her feel at ease. She slowly fell asleep. In a daze, she asked him, Yim Yulin, we're not going to be apart anymore, right? He wasn't asleep. Hearing that, his body trembled, and then he looked down at her. After looking for a long time, he smiled lightly. Yeah, we're not going to be apart anymore. She wrapped her arms around his neck and rubbed herself against his chest. In the afternoon, when Baishuali woke up, he was no longer in bed. She sat on the bed in a daze for a long time before she lifted the blanket and ran out barefoot. She ran downstairs, but didn't find him, so she ran to the study. Yim Yulin was there, and so was Hao Yun. The two of them looked like they were discussing something. Baishuali stood at the door and wanted to leave, but Yim Yulin had already found her. So did Hao Yun. He smiled. Then I'll leave first. Wait a minute. I still have something to discuss later. Yim Yulin said as he got up and walked out of the door. He looked at Baishuali and looked down at her toes for a while. Go back to the room and put on your shoes. Oh. She wanted to run away as soon as possible. Yim Yulin suddenly reached out and grabbed her arm. He said softly, I won't disappear suddenly. She said, oh, again. This time, her eyes lingered on him for a long time. When she left, she was a little panicked. Yim Yulin smiled behind her. He smiled happily. She ran away barefoot as fast as she could. Yim Yulin looked at her with a faint smile on his lips. We walked back. Hao Yun smiled. She listens to you. Yim Yulin went back and sat down. I used to listen to it, but now... He lit a cigarette. You're not very obedient, and you hate me to death. Hao Yun laughed, but didn't say anything. In fact, whether he hated or not, he could see it with a glance. They continued their discussion and dispersed at noon. Hao Yun invited Yim Yulin and Baishuali to his place for lunch. Yim Yulin politely declined. My wound still hurts a little. You should rest at home. Hao Yun thought about it for a while and then left. After he left, Yim Yulin walked into the bedroom. Baishuali had already changed her clothes and shoes and was looking at him. He smiled. What are we having for lunch? She looked at him and whispered, Can your body take it? You were discharged not long ago. Yim Yulin said in a low voice, I'm all right. Then he rubbed her hair. Let's go downstairs for lunch. She nodded and went downstairs to eat with him. She would look at him from time to time while eating. Yim Yulin looked at her and smiled. What are you looking at? She bit her lip. Well, isn't your mother coming over? I want to see her. Yim Yulin continued eating and looked at her with a smile. It's not convenient. Chapter 3565. Yim Yulin ate for a long time before saying, Don't you feel awkward that she's with Hao Yun now? If you don't mind, why should I? She stared at him and said softly, Yim Yulin, you really don't mind? I heard that a lot of straight men mind it. He stared at her and smiled faintly. I only mind if my wife sleeps with someone else. Her face reddened, but she didn't say anything and continued to eat. Yim Yulin suddenly said, Oh, right. You used to call her Mummy, but now it's your mummy. She heard his words and looked up at him before biting her lip and saying softly, We're not in that kind of relationship anymore. Then what's our relationship now? He stared at her with a burning gaze. Baishuali looked at him. I don't know. He chuckled. Baishuali, you know very well in your heart, don't you? She bit her lip and didn't say anything. He didn't mind and didn't make things difficult for her. Baishuali realized that Yim Yulin seemed to have changed into a different person. He had become quite tolerant and wasn't as angry as before. She didn't know if she was happy or unhappy about such a change. After eating in silence, she looked at him. I want to go for a walk. Do you want to come? She actually wanted to take him out for a walk because other than eating and sleeping, he was always working in the study and smoking. She felt that it was a little inappropriate. Her eyes were filled with anticipation as she stared at him, looking a little adorable. This reminded Yim Yulin of the time when they moved into the condominium not long after they got married. She was also adorable like this, but he had angered her to death the next day. So how could he reject her small request? He reached out and held her hand as they walked outside. The sun is pretty good. I want to go out for a walk, too. Bai Shuali followed beside him and looked down at his hand that was holding hers. She felt a little guilty. They shouldn't have been together. The Bai family, the Yi family, and Wen Yuan really shouldn't have been together. But she fell in love again. She didn't want to let go of him. Yi Mulin put on a jacket. After they went out, they walked around the neighborhood. The environment here was especially good. Although it was winter, there were many green plants and even flowers. At first, he held Bai Shuali's hand. Later, she simply supported him and walked away. Yi Mulin smiled. Bai Shuali, don't treat me like a patient. I'm fine now. Didn't we do it yesterday? Her face turned red and she whispered, Yi Mulin, can you not say this? He looked down at her, his eyes gentle. Soon after, Bai Shuali discovered something to her horror. Yi Mulin had been official for more than a year, and his entire temperament seemed to have changed. It wasn't that he was greasy, but rather that he used to be an elite cold-faced lawyer. Now, he seemed to be easygoing and had a special feeling of a superior. She kept looking at him. Yi Mulin chuckled. What's wrong? I just feel like you're different. You're like those people on the news, like my dad and your dad, she said, looking at him without blinking as if she was studying him. Yi Mulin frowned. Are you saying that I'm old? Chapter 3566. As soon as he said that, she glared at him. You're different from them. You're especially shameless. Yi Mulin looked around and then hugged her. His voice was particularly hoarse. Then should I be shameless right now? With that, he lowered his head and kissed her. It was on the side of the neighborhood. Under the French plane tree, something that looked like cotton floated down. Strand by strand, it landed on her hair and his shoulder. Coupled with this kiss, it was very romantic. After the kiss, he pecked the corner of her mouth and murmured, How does it feel? Bai Shuali opened her eyes wide and looked up at him. After a long while, she whispered, It's just a little sinful. His eyes dimmed for a moment, and then he quietly hugged her in his arms. His voice was low as he said, Surely, I can't do anything to the past, but I promise that it won't get any worse. He paused and lowered his voice even more. Although I think this promise is terrible, Shuali, this is the biggest promise I can make to you right now. Her lips trembled, but she didn't say anything because she didn't know what to say. After a long while, she whispered, Really, Yi Mulin, I feel very guilty. My dad is in prison, and my mom is in the hospital. I don't dare to think about what they will think and do when my dad is released one day and my mom wakes up from the hospital. If they find out that I'm still with you, will they hate me? But I can't care about that now. She looked up at him. I admit that I can't forget you, but she choked. If you're going to get married one day, I'll leave. I can't be a man's mistress. Don't make things difficult for me then, okay? His gaze was heavy. He stared at her for a long time before he said okay. Her heart was a little broken, and she couldn't help hugging him. She felt that she wasn't worth it, and she looked down on herself. But Yi Mulin's existence was poison to her, and she thought that she was the same to him. Neither of them was better off than the other, and neither of them had it easy. They were both in pain. She hugged him and murmured, Will you look for me when I go to hell? No. He smiled. How could I bear to let you go? He hugged her, lowered his head, and kissed her again. After they got together again, today was the best time for them. There was no flirting, only the snuggling of an old married couple. After a long time, they walked forward again. The sun shone warmly on their bodies. However, he stopped after walking for about 100 meters. In front of him were Hao Yun and Su Fu. Two young couples and two old couples looked at each other. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Yi Mulin was the first to speak. He tilted his head and said to Bai Shuali, Didn't you say you wanted to see Mom? Why are you in a daze now? His words were very subtle. The other two people present could tell that he still regarded Bai Shuali as his wife. Only Bai Shuali herself could not tell. She immediately ran over and hugged Su Fu. She wanted to call her Auntie, but she couldn't. She buried her face in Su Fu's arms and acted like a spoiled child. Hao Yin felt a sense of danger. He felt that the wife he had just gotten might not belong to him alone. There were so many people who would share it, Su Fu did not know his dark thoughts. He lowered his head and touched by Xiuli's head. You're still like a child. Chapter 3567. Su Fu patted her gently and said in a low voice, Shueli, it's done. Bai Xiuli was still hugging him, not only because she was a little excited, but also because she was embarrassed. Actually, she felt uncomfortable, and so did Su Fu. She was an elder, and now that she was with another man, it would not look good on her. In the end, Bai Xiuli still went to Hao Yun and Su Fu's house as a guest. Su Fu made flower tea and snacks for Bai Xiuli. As usual, the two men went into the study room. In the small flower hall, Bai Xiuli looked at Su Fu and felt that she was a little different. Although she was still very loving, the magnetic field of her entire body was different, as if she could shine. She thought about it, and thought of a word, which was being loved. It was because she was loved that she shone. She sipped the flower tea and asked softly, Is Uncle Hao treating you well? Mom, are you happy? I'm happy. Su Fu patted her head. Shueli, do you think Mom isn't good? Bai Xiuli shook her head. No, Mom, you're very good. Really? She lowered her head. It was Yimulin's father who didn't cherish you. Su Fu said softly, You know? Bai Xiuli hummed, lowered her head, and said in a low voice, Xian Ning, she is already dead. Su Fu's expression was momentarily stunned. After a long time, he smiled faintly. That's a pity. As he said that, he raised his head. I remember that she used to go to the old house often. How could a difficult girl be willing to follow Yi Zhonggang? Yes, his position is very high, and he has the charm of a superior. But isn't it good to find a man of the same age to have a beautiful relationship? As Su Fu said that, he took a sip of the flower tea and sighed softly. It's a pity. Bai Xiuli looked at him. She did not know if she should comfort Madame Yi at this moment. She felt that she should say something, but she was not sure. After a long time, she whispered, Mom, are you with Uncle Hao for revenge, or do you really like him? Su Fu's face reddened as he looked at Bai Xiuli. He took another sip of flower tea and said faintly, Life is only so long, and I'm not young anymore. Where would I find time to think about revenge? Isn't that just torturing myself with the mistakes of others? Bai Xiuli replied with an, Oh, and lowered her head, looking very cute. Su Fu smiled. Let's eat something. The two of them talked about something else. Bai Xiuli was still a little uneasy, which Su Fu could see and understand. She sighed in her heart. After going through so many things, this child was indeed different from before. After chatting for the whole afternoon, Su Fu asked them to stay for dinner. She and Hao Yun cooked together. Bai Xiuli and Yi Mulin were watching TV in the living room. Bai Xiuli fiddled with Yi Mulin for a while and said softly, You don't look out of place at all? Without a place, as long as they are happy. Yi Mulin smiled faintly. Do you want to break them up? She lowered her head. I didn't mean that. He looked at her, lowered her head, and said in a low voice, I know. I'm just teasing you. She looked up at him with an expression as if how hateful he was. He smiled and reached out to hug her. It was very warm and natural, as if he was at his own home. Chapter 3568. Aren't they doing fine too? Yi Mulin pinched her cheeks. We're doing fine too. Bai Xiuli bit her lips. We're different from them, right? How are we different? More or less. Yi Mulin smiled. Tell me about it. How could she be willing to tell him? She lowered her eyes and muttered. You know, he said deliberately, you're saying that we're living together illegally, right? You're right. Bai Xiuli was angered by him and retorted softly. Uncle Hao doesn't have any other girlfriends. At the mention of this, she was a little bothered and did not say anything for a long time. He looked at her with a smile on his face. What's wrong? She said a little gloomily. Nothing, and nothing can happen. She squeezed out of his embrace, and he did not stop her, merely looking at her with a faint smile. After a while, he said softly, I won't like her. Bai Xiuli tilted her head and looked at him. He smiled and pinched her cheeks. This wasn't a guarantee, and it made her feel even more conflicted and guilty. During the meal, Bai Xiuli was a little absent-minded. Yulin picked up a piece of meat and placed it in her bowl. Hurry up and eat. She looked at him. This piece of meat is so fat, it'll get fat. He picked up the meat and ate the fat part for himself, leaving the lean part for her. She was speechless, but under the gaze of 3 pairs of eyes, she still bit the bullet and ate the meat. It tasted pretty good. After eating, she looked at him eagerly. It was delicious. Could she have another piece? Yulin smiled faintly and picked up another piece of meat for her. She ate it carefully and smiled. It's really delicious, Mummy. Can I come here every day? Of course. Su Fu agreed. The other 2 men looked at each other speechlessly. However, there was nothing they could do as long as they were happy. Yulin understood how Yin very well. After the meal, he took Bai Shuili away. She was still reluctant to leave as he stared at her. You still can't bear to leave? Are you staying for the new year? She walked in silence. It was a little cold, and it was useless to wrap her clothes around herself. In the end, she hugged his arm. It's going to be New Year's soon. Yulin's body stiffened for a moment. Then he whispered, do you want to go back to Be City for the new year? She looked at him. Can I? Then she stopped and said softly, Yulin, can I make a New Year's wish? He looked straight at her and whispered, yes, no matter what it is, I'm willing to fulfill it for you. She took a step forward and gently hugged his waist. I want to celebrate the new year with Mom and Dad. I want to see them. Yulin, am I stupid? I always feel that when I'm with them, none of this will happen. The Bai family will still be fine. The night was cold, and she was in his arms. His embrace was very warm. She knew that she shouldn't be greedy, but she couldn't help it. She whispered, Yulin, I really feel guilty. I'll let down my parents by being with you. As she spoke, she began to cry. She didn't cry out loud, just silently shed tears. Seeing her cry made him feel bad. He lowered his head and gently stroked her little head. Shuili, don't cry. Chapter 35:69. She did not say anything. She only hugged him in the cold night and absorbed a little bit of warmth from his body. She did not know how long she could hug him. 1 year or 2 years. In her heart, she actually faintly knew that he and Wen Yuan had reached some sort of consensus regarding her existence. No matter how much she denied it, it would not change the fact that she was now a part of their perfect marriage. She did not want to think about the future. She just wanted to hug him now. Yulin's chin rested on her little head. He did not speak and just hugged her. In the following days, he was very busy. She often went to Su Fu's place to disturb him. Fortunately, Hao Yin was also busy, so the 2 women could accompany each other. It was as if their days had returned to the past. However, this calmness was so calm that it made people flustered. In the blink of an eye, it was almost the new year. Yulin was even busier than usual. At the beginning, Bai Shuili could only see him in the news. Just like how she used to see her father in the news, she would sometimes sit in front of the television in a daze. She did not know why he wanted to keep her by his side. She felt that he liked his current position or a higher position. She was a little flustered. He treated her very well. Would there be a day when he would be like Yi Zhonggang to Su Fu? No, that's not it. She was playing the role of Xianing. Wen Yuan was the role of Su Fu. She felt that it was a little sad. She sat in front of the television and watched her man. That night, he did not return past midnight, and tomorrow was New Year's Eve. She lay on the bed and did not fall asleep. She kept waiting for him. She did not know what she was persevering for. Tomorrow, she would return to Be City. She would not be able to see her father, so she wanted to see her mother. Hearing that her mother's illness was much better was perhaps the greatest comfort. When she was in a daze, she felt a gust of cold wind blowing past. When she opened her eyes, she saw Yulin leaning against her side. He did not turn on the light and leaned against her as if he wanted to kiss her. She asked hoarsely, "What time is it?" Without waiting for him to reply, she said, "The sky seems very cold." He replied absent-mindedly, "It's 2 o'clock. I'm so tired." As he spoke, he laid down flat and placed a hand on his forehead. "But I can rest for 3 days." He tilted his head and looked at her in the dark, waiting for her surprise. Bai Shuili was shocked, but not happy. She stammered, "Aren't you Captain S?" Shouldn't you stay here to work? What a cruel little thing. He pinched her face and said in a low voice, By Shueli, who told you that Boss S has to work during the new year? I know. Her voice was a little soft as she looked at him. Then where are you going to spend the new year? Your mom is here. He pulled her into his arms. She felt that his body was cold and wanted to struggle free. Mulin took off his jacket, took off his shoes, and climbed into the blanket. She was so angry that she screamed. You didn't even take off your shoes before climbing onto the bed. Mulin, you're too hateful. He smiled and lay flat on the bed. His voice was a little low. You don't like me anymore? As soon as he finished speaking, he pulled her into his arms and buried his face in her neck. Bai Shueli shouted angrily, I smell smoke. Mulin, let go of me. He laughed. I don't want to. As he smiled, he began to kiss her. As his lips became hotter and hotter, Bai Shueli's voice trembled. Aren't you tired? Chapter 3570. Then the kiss changed. She couldn't resist it and was completely burned. After it was over, he took a quick shower with her in his arms and lay on the bed, murmuring, The plane will be at 8 tomorrow morning. Shueli, remember to wake me up. She looked at him. Mulin, are you going back to Bee City too? He nodded and then closed his eyes. Yes, let's go back together. She didn't say anything. She thought he was going back to Bee City for the new year. She closed her eyes and hugged him gently. Early in the morning, Mulin woke up first. He opened his eyes and looked at the woman in his arms. He pinched her face. Shueli, get up. She opened her eyes in a daze. She was more sleepy than he was. Mulin smiled. Get up. Otherwise, the plane will be late and we'll have to wait for a long time. He lifted the quilt and went to get clothes for her. As he put on his clothes, he said, It's cold in Bee City. Wear an extra sweater. Bai Shueli put on the sweater and looked at him. Are you going back with me? After putting on the sweater and pants, he said calmly, Didn't we agree last night when we did it? She blushed. What did he mean by agreeing last night? He was so shameless. He didn't even blush when he said those words. Bai Shueli put on the sweater and said in a low voice, It's not good. Mulin walked beside her and whispered, I'll take you back first, and then I'll go home. She looked at him and felt a little uneasy. Home? Did she still have a home? While she was in a daze, Mulin had already picked her up and walked to the bathroom. He said lightly, Brush your teeth and wash your face. If the plane doesn't arrive in time, your New Year's wish won't come true. She let out an ah and looked at him. He smiled and didn't say anything. At 8 o'clock, the plane flew to Bee City. It was rare that he didn't deal with business. Instead, he was reading a magazine and then took a nap. Bai Shueli was at a loss, so she sat on the edge of the cabin and looked outside. When the plane landed, Mulin woke up and said to her, I'll take you back. She shook her head. No need. I'll go to the hospital myself. He stared at her for a while. Let me take you. It's very convenient for a chauffeur to pick you up. She still wanted to say something, but she also realized that if she continued to refuse, it would seem a little strange, so she didn't say anything. The driver waited for them to come over and opened the car door for them. Mulin sat in the car and closed his eyes to rest. He had been working for the past few days and only rested for 4 to 5 hours a day. Bai Shueli looked at the bruises at the corner of his eyes and whispered, You're so tired. Why did you? If you want to, then do it. He smiled and pulled her into his arms. Kissing her hair, he pressed his chin against her hair and murmured, Tomorrow, you'll go back to the apartment, okay? As he spoke, he held her hand. There was a key in her palm. She had left the key behind before she went to H City. Did he find out? Why? Her voice trembled. His eyes were still closed as he sighed softly. I want you to be there. I want to be able to find you at any time. As he spoke, he ruffled her hair. Bai Shueli, stop talking now. Let me sleep for a while. Chapter 3571. The car kept driving. Bai Shueli suddenly turned around and asked, Why is it here? Outside the car window. Everything was so familiar that it made her heart tremble. It was the Bai residence. After the Bai family lost, it was confiscated. Later, she heard that it was auctioned. Why did he drive her here? The car stopped. Yimulin slowly turned his head and said softly, I bought this place. I've asked someone to pick up your father, and your mother is in good spirits, but they only have one night. Your father has to go back, and your mother is better off receiving treatment in the hospital. Someone will pick them up tomorrow morning. You wait for me at the apartment. We'll go back to City H on the second night of the new year. She still looked at him and said in a hoarse voice, How did my father get out? Although he was only sentenced to 5 years, she knew that it was not an ordinary 5 years. It was difficult for her to even see him, let alone get him out for one night. He had taken a big risk. If others knew about it, his future would be gone. Yimulin looked at her and put his hand on her hair. His voice was warm. This is your New Year's wish. I have to find a way to satisfy it, right? Okay, good girl, I have to go. I'll pick you up at the apartment the day after tomorrow. She looked at him, still in a daze. He turned his body and reached out to open the car door for her. His voice was very low. It's not convenient for me to show up. Get out. She seemed to wake up from a dream. When she got out of the car, her steps were unsteady. At this moment, Yimulin rolled down the window and smiled. Happy New Year, Shueli. She hadn't come back to her senses yet. She said in a daze, Happy New Year. Then she watched the car window rise and the car drive away. Bai Shueli watched for a while before running into the villa. Mr. and Mrs. Bai were there. Mr. Bai had lost a lot of weight. He was squatting in front of Mrs. Bai and talking to her. Mrs. Bai seemed to be in good spirits. Bai Shueli stood on the stairs and looked at the familiar scene. Her eyes were warm and tears came out of her eyes. Dad, Mom. She walked in and hugged Mr. and Mrs. Bai. Mrs. Bai was in good spirits, but her brain was not very sensitive. She could not remember some things and thought that things were still the same as before. So she smiled and said, Shirley, why are you crazy again? Hurry up and wash your hands. Your father will celebrate the new year with us tonight, so he doesn't have to go out to visit the people anymore. He will accompany us today. When she said this, her spirit was indescribably happy. Bai Shueli felt a little sad when she saw this. She looked at her father, and Mr. Bai smiled faintly. She nodded. Yes, Dad won't be going out today. She still wanted to cry, but she quickly wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes and squeezed out a smile. This kind of reunion was not easy. She knew that Yimulin had paid a huge price for it. She could not mess it up. Perhaps the next time she could see her father would be a few years later. The reunion dinner was prepared by Mr. Bai himself. Mrs. Bai had been complaining that the servants at home had become lazy and no one was cooking. Bai Shueli said, Dad gave them a day off so that they could reunite. Mrs. Bai was happy again. She looked at Mr. Bai cooking. Bai Shueli looked at them and quietly went to the side. She wanted them to spend more time together. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.